Hi boys and girls, welcome back to Children's Church Online. We've been spending a few months finding out the answer to this question. Who does God say I am? Today you'll discover that we are God's servants. We're going to see how Jesus modeled this quality by washing feet. So before we begin today's lesson, I wanted to tell you a story about our family when someone's feet got very dirty. Our family likes to go hiking, and so one day we all decided to go on this particular hike, and it had rained, but we felt like it would be pretty safe to go. Just to be safe, we all decided to wear rain boots in case we hit any spots that were a little muddy. So we started down the path, and it was fine until we got to one particular part that was really kind of swampy and gooey. And we said, you know what, we've all got rain boots on, they're waterproof, let's just go for it and walk through the sludge and mud. So that's what we did. Until my one daughter, Molly, was walking through the mud, and it was that type of mud that was going every time you'd take a step. And on one of the steps that she took, her boot went down in the mud and her foot came back up, but the boot didn't. It stuck right there in the mud, and her foot came out and she lost her balance and she stepped right down into the mud in her sock foot. At the time, it was hilarious, except to everybody except Molly. So that's a story that I had to tell you about a time when we had someone get very, very dirty feet. Do you have a story in your family about a time when somebody got very dirty feet? I bet we've all had dirty, stinky feet. And in the Bible, Jesus saw some dirty, stinky feet too. And he saw that as a chance to be a servant. Let's find out more about why he washed those stinky feet by reading God's word together. Today we're going to see what it means that we are God's servants. It's actually pretty cool because Jesus himself showed us what it means. Today we're going to read from the book of John, chapter 13, and this is what verses 4 and 5 say. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. So, for today's lesson, if you want to, you can participate in a family foot washing. And here's what that may look like, okay? I brought with me today just a big round serving bowl. You can use a bowl like this, but you could also use a plastic tub or basin or anything you have at home. And then you'll want to get a pitcher of water, probably not cold water, or it might not feel so good. And you'll pour that into your basin. Okay. And then I would encourage you to do right now, if you're going to participate in it, have the parents wash the children's feet. So kiddos, you could stick your feet in the water and get them all wet. If you want to use soap, you can too, but you don't have to. And then just grab maybe a small hand towel and dry your feet off. You can also, while your feet are in there, use the pitcher of water to pour over your feet. That might feel kind of refreshing, okay? So if you want to do that, you can, you don't have to, but if you're going to, go ahead and pause the video and have the parents wash the children's feet, okay? So it might seem weird in our culture, but back in Jesus' time, foot washing was a common tradition. People walked on dirt roads to get places, and they also wore sandals. So their feet got really dirty as they traveled. It was traditional for them to get their feet washed whenever they entered a house. If you think about it, they're wearing sandals, their feet are all dirty, and they're about to walk in someone's house. It could make a lot of dirt in the home. And so that's why they would do that. What are some things that we do whenever we welcome someone into our house, since foot washing is not really a tradition for us? We probably don't wash someone's feet, but we may ask them to take their shoes off or have a place in our house where we ask people to put their shoes so that they aren't getting dirt in our house. We might also offer to take their jacket if they wore one and hang it up for them until it's time for them to leave. Here's the thing. Washing a visitor's feet was the tradition, but it wasn't something that someone important like Jesus would normally do. That was a servant's job. And Jesus washed the disciples' feet to show that we are God's servants. And then he told them why he did it. Listen again to John 13, verses 12 through 15. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. So, if your family is participating in the foot washing, now's the time when I want you to pause the video, and the children are going to wash the parents' feet. So go ahead and do that now. Thank you for being brave and serving each other. How did it feel to wash someone's feet? To get your own feet washed? Why do you think Jesus gave us this example? What can we learn about God by serving someone else, by being served? Even though Jesus is God, he did the job of a servant. He set the example for us that we are God's servants. Many of you have just served each other at home, and now you'll get a chance to serve others. So this time of year, during the season of Advent, it's a common time for us to serve other people. You can do that in your home, but a lot of people like to go out into the community and serve one another. I know this year might be a little bit more challenging than other years, but there are still things that all of us can do. In our house, we call these RACs, R-A-K, which stands for Random Acts of Kindness. And I have a whole list of ideas here, okay? And I'm going to email this list to your parents so that if your family would like to think of some ideas of ways that you could serve other people during the Christmas season, you'll have some ideas to get you started, okay? Like number 2 on the list says something as simple as hold the door open for someone. Just by holding a door open for someone else, you're serving them. Or even just letting them go first in line ahead of you. That's serving someone. So this list has 100 ideas. See if you and your family can spend some time this week looking at it and finding some ways that you can follow the example of Jesus and serve others around you. Today, we are learning that we are God's servants. And sometimes that can mean spending a whole day volunteering to serve others. But it can also be in little things, like holding that door open for someone, or giving a big thank you to a store worker, or just letting somebody else have a turn first. This week, look for ways to serve. All right, Jesus showed us how to be servants. Let's watch Dirty Feet.
Hello, I'm Phineas, and I want to tell you about Jesus and how much he loved people. Just before the Passover feast, Jesus knew that the time had come to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his dear friends, he continued to love them right to the end. So Jesus got up from the supper table, set aside his robe, and put on an apron. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the feet of the disciples, drying them with his apron. Jesus came to Simon Peter, who said to him,
"Lord, are you going to wash my feet?"
And Jesus said,
"You don't understand now what I'm doing, but you will understand later."
But Peter said,
"You're not going to wash my feet ever."
Jesus answered,
"If I don't wash your feet, you can't be part of what I'm doing."
"Master,"
said Peter,
"not only my feet then, wash my hands, wash my head."
If you've had a bath in the morning, you only need your feet washed now, and you're clean from head to toe. My concern, you understand, is holiness, not hygiene. So now you're clean."
When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his robe and sat down again.
Do you understand what I've just done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that is what I am. If I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash each other's feet. I did this as an example, so that you should do as I have done for you. If you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them.
And so, through this powerful event in the Bible, we can see that if Jesus was willing to wash people's feet, then surely we can find ways to serve others like Jesus did.
Boys and girls, just imagine Jesus showed up right here in person and started washing your feet. What would you do? I think I would feel a little uncomfortable, if I'm being honest. Just coming from heaven to earth was a way Jesus served us. But he humbled himself even further when he did a servant's job, washing feet. It was a real shock for the disciples to have someone who was in charge of them serve them. But Jesus showed them what it looks like when we are God's servants. All right, today we're discovering that we are God's servants. Jesus washed what were probably very dirty feet to show that serving others is important. So let's see what it's like to have a dirty mess to clean up. I'm not going to make a super huge mess, but it is a mess. So I'm going to do this little experiment with you, and if you want to try it at home, you certainly can, but watch me do it first, okay? So if you want to participate, these are the things that you would need. I brought with me some vegetable shortening, and luckily it's butter flavored, so it's yellow in color, so it's a little bit easier for you to see. You can still use the white kind if you have the white kind at home. You can also use a stick of butter. That would work just fine as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is using a spoon, any type of utensil. I'm gonna scoop out, and boys and girls, we're talking like just a little smidge, okay? You don't need a lot to do this experiment. And then I brought with me a paper plate, and I'm going to take this Crisco and just like smush it into this plate, okay? Just smear it in best you can, all right? That's pretty good. You don't need a lot. You can, but you don't need to, all right? And now your goal is to try to clean this dirty plate, okay? Doesn't look like that big of a mess, doesn't seem like it should be that big of a deal. But the problem is, if you've ever touched vegetable shortening or butter, you know that it feels what? Yeah, really slimy, slippery, gooey. So if I even just start using my finger and I can get like the chunk off, right? Have some paper towels nearby. So I can get that off. But if I really want to get this clean, it is not going to happen. It might kind of look clean-ish, but if you were to touch this paper plate right now, you would feel that there's this slimy, oily goo on there that no matter how much rubbing would not come off, okay? So I have a solution to get that off. What's in this jug? Now, I know you aren't here with me right now, but if you were, I would have you smell the clear liquid that's in here, and you would say to me, gross, it smells horrific. However, this is what I'm going to use to clean my plate, okay? So if I take my paper towel, and I would have a grown-up help with this, okay? I just also happen to buy this in a very large jug. At your house, you might have this in a smaller jug. And now, if I wipe my paper plate, you can't really see it, I know, from where you are, but you would see that it's actually almost like melting away that oily, gooey mess that was in this plate. Let me just get a dry one here so I can show it to you. You probably won't be able to see it super good because it's a white plate. But literally, it took all of that off so that it's clean. I mean, clean, but it took all of that slimy, gooey stuff. And it's actually taking it off my fingers too. Remember how I had used my finger to kind of get the big chunks off in the beginning? My fingers aren't slimy, gross, and oily anymore. Anybody know what might be in this jug? If you guessed vinegar, you would be correct. Vinegar is the stuff that we use at Easter time if you dye Easter eggs. So if you can envision that, you might be able to envision that smell that I'm talking about. So vinegar is an acid, and it actually is a really good cleaner. Now it's safe for us. We use it in cooking sometimes, okay? But it breaks down the fatty, gooey stuff that's in vegetable shortening and butter, and that's why it did such an amazing job cleaning my paper plate, right? All right. Was it surprising to you that something that smells as terrible as vinegar could actually be a good cleaner? Well, it does. We use it for cooking, and we can also use it for cleaning. That's why the vinegar helped clean the oil from the plate and my hands, even if it seemed too stinky to be a good cleaner. When Jesus cleaned his disciples' feet, it was surprising for a whole different reason, right? Sometimes people think if they're really important, they shouldn't have to serve other people. But Jesus is the most important, and he showed that we are God's servants. The vinegar wasn't too stinky to clean, and Jesus wasn't too important to serve others. Don't forget to go out and find ways this week that you and your family can serve others. I'll see you next week.